Okay, so kind of going to start off with how to install simply the pry. Pretty easy setup, and then walk through kind of the different commands at the basics, the fundamentals of pry. So the first thing, let me jump over. Um, is if it up, it's just simply that load the pry gem from Ruby Gems and install it into your local Ruby. Um, for smaller project or for projects that have a that is a gem or an app, then generally we might use Bundler to create just a simple gem file. Declares your gem dependencies. So for instance, in this case, we might say that
Terminal disappeared. Or at least I'm not able to see it.
you don't see the terminal.
Does everybody else see it?
I'm seeing.
Yeah. I see it.
Okay. Okay, so never mind. Sorry. I can click on it.
Is it coming back now?
Yep, thanks.
Okay. And just simply, here we're going to set up when in development, the following gems apply, and we'll just say gem pry, whatever the latest version is from the source Ruby gems. And utility to look at C source from Ruby. The normal pry doesn't give you access to the C source, the C code. So when we have that gem file, then we want to say something like bundle install, and that'll fetch those two dependencies. I'll already have them, so it should be pretty quick. And these are all the sort of transitive dependencies for your project. So once you have that, then you can just simply spin up pry from your project, and you have that terminal there in front of that prompt. So that's kind of the installation step, pretty straightforward. Then once you get, as soon as you have pry installed, the first thing you might want to try doing is, help. What can I actually do with pry? And it gives you a pager here with different categories of commands that you could explore. The basics being kind of traversing objects in the context section, and then editing and looking at the source code, doing other things. There's aliases for more widely used commands to make it easier to type, that kind of stuff. So that's just handy. And then if you have an individual command like the ls command, you can do a -- help or as a switch, and it'll give you your standard options. So that's kind of how you might learn within the pry shell. Oops. And then inspecting. So inspecting things is pretty straightforward as well. As soon as you get into a pry shell, you can type ls and it'll show you a couple of things. There are local variables that you have, and there are methods that are defined within the scope that you're in, and here you happen to be within the scope of an object. So you have a lot of methods available to you. This just kind of shows you the basic ones defined within this object. So if you look at the locals specifically, this is pretty interesting. This is kind of the pry bookkeeping. So for instance, the underscore is the last result, the last output that came out of the REPL. So if I did something like x is, I got 3, underscore will be 3, and double underscore is 2 back in the history. So it's in this case 3 as well because I outputted 3 with the underscore. So double underscore will give me back. Then you have things like simply what file is it in. In this case, there isn't one. The directory is nil as well. That's kind of interesting. I wouldn't expect that to be true. The pry object itself is there as well with the underscore. So that's kind of interesting. If you do the -- help, you can get more options here saying, okay, well, I'm really interested in, did I declare any locals yet? Well, we did do X, so X will come up as a local. So what constants are defined within the scope, like what classes or modules in Ruby do you have defined within the scope? So here, a lot of the basic Ruby objects will be already declared, or the constants will already be defined. And then things like globals as well, where you have the load path, standard in, standard out, and a lot of the other kind of quick shell globals. So that's pretty interesting. It just kind of allows you to list out where you are. Let's see. So then certainly you can go and start creating Ruby stuff. So for instance, I have a range value here, expression 0 to 100 numbers. So that is a range object, right? So every expression on the line is evaluated, and you get your results. So the range will be inspected, and I think that's kind of the inspect is a string representation for that object, and that's what pry is doing under the covers. Say 0 to 100 in the class of that, I would expect to be the range. So you can start to dig in deep with the ls command and the change. It's kind of overloaded here, but the change directory, the cd command. So for instance, I can say, list range, and I get here are my basic instance methods on range. Again, I can open up my help documentation here and say that, let's see, I'm interested in, let's say, I think it's when you're trying to be verbose about it. Let me list the range, and what that will do is it'll go through all of the mixed in modules. So the ancestor chain of from range all the way, to the module methods it has, to kernel methods that are available that are woven into the object. So you can see all the way back up, and all that is available from a range. You can also, if you want to explore, let's say you have an object hierarchy, you want to explore deep into it, you can change into that, and your path will change, or your prompt will change appropriately. And then you can list from there, change directory back. So that's fairly handy. And then some of this becomes a little bit more interesting when you're debugging. But if I'm within a range, you can always ask, where am I? It might tell you that. Usually it'll actually give you like a source snapshot. We'll see that. We'll see that in a bit. But in this case, it just says you're within the range object. At the top level, you just say at the top level. That's pretty straightforward. Let's see, exploring methods. Yeah, you can get different output. You can get different output if you use, if you're saying I want to list verbose methods on range, then you can get, that didn't give me colored output. I think it's the -p option there. -p showing different colors, or whether it's protected or private. You'll see different colors there, where I believe public is is in white, and I think blue is private, if I'm not mistaken. Colors didn't seem to match up with what the documentation said, so I'm unsure which is which. Let's see. Jump back. So I'm trying to get through this quickly so that you can ask questions at the end. I can try to do different scenarios that they're interested in. So editing particular, so you can start to define methods as well. So I want to have a method that takes some numbers, and I want it to take numbers and select out the even, even ones, and map that to twice the range, or twice the value. So I can, so now that I have numbers there, I can call it, certainly. Now in this case it'll fail because even is actually not a method on an integer or fixed num class or an instance. So the problem there is even is probably the wrong thing. So here's where I can say, okay, well, let me just list fixed num. Let me see what that is. In fact, you can even, if you have a lot of alpha, you can just do dash, and you'll get, oh, it's actually even with a question mark. That's kind of a Rubyism that's for returning Boolean values. So in fact, I really wanted that. So if I use my history, I can go back and redefine munge if I wanted to, or I could even do something like show method munge to actually list the method that you have defined. But even better, I can say edit, and it'll look at your it'll either look at your shell environment's editor value or what you've configured inside of pry to pick the right editor that you like. So in this case, it's using Vim, and I can go back, just change that to my even question mark, and it's already refreshed within the session. So if I go back using munge, or using the method munge, I'll see that it doubles the even number 2 to 4. So that's a kind of a quick, all right, I made a mistake here. I saw the the output, it was an error, and I went back and edited the method, and that's automatically reloaded in the session. Another cool thing is once you have that, you can list it again, of course, munge. Once I have that, I'm able to say, now I really want to, I played around with this method and it works well for me. Let me save out munge to a file. File. And now I actually have something inside of a Ruby file that I can, start working. I could even play around with, in here and say, okay, I want to really, then gets reloaded inside of the session. So if I go back to my munge, I'll get 8 instead of 4. So that's that one. Save file, edit method. All right, now here's my my last example here. So what do I want to do here? I want to load a Ruby script that does a bit of reopens the string class and adds a function in there. So let's say first I want to say, okay, well, if I want to call out to the shell, I can prefix the command with dot. So my current directory, well, what is that? .pwd. What do I have inside there? I'll list that. String patch is what I'm interested in. I can cat that just to take a look, because I haven't yet loaded it inside of my session. Now I see it opens the string class again. This is kind of a Ruby ability to reopen classes and add instance methods or class methods to it. In this case, I'm going to add an instance method to it called snakeCase that does some manipulation on the string, or on the string itself, and returns it back. So I'll use the Ruby load function to bring in string patch. Now, if you look at string, right, a reopened string, you should see somewhere there. Again, I can just look for snakeCase, and I can see it there. Now I have the ability to say, okay, I'm interested in the documentation, so I did, in fact, add some documentation to it, and to reference it with a pound separation, which is kind of the RDoc way of dereferencing from a class method. And you see that it converts a string to the snakeCase. It gives you examples of what it should be doing. So that means then I can come up with a string, and I should be able to on it. Should convert it to a snakeCase. But unfortunately, it looks like the last underscore is the last trailing underscore is still there. So the handy thing again is I can say let's edit string snake case. And if you notice that string snake case is actually declared or defined in string patch. So that's where it's going to open up. It's going to open up the source of that definition. So what it's doing here is it's doing a global substitution on capitalized words and yielding each capitalized word to the Ruby block, which is right here. And then using a global $ampersand, which is the match itself, downcasing it, so lowercasing it, and then adding. So this is a string interpolation. They'll add a underscore at the end. So do you see the bug here? No? Hello?
Did you say, do we see the bug?
Yeah, do you see a bug?
Apart from that trailing underscore at the end, no.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, that would be the bug here. So you're right. You know, each match is going to have a trailing underscore, so the end of the string will end with that trailing underscore. So I can add in, you know, if I don't have the ability to jump, I guess I can open up another pry session, try to figure out what I have on string. That'll help me. But in fact, I know that I can just chomp off a particular character using a string chomp. And save that, right click back, and now if I show doc string snake case, it is in fact it'll well, documentation is not going to give you much, is it? You'll see chomps there. It's automatically reloaded too, so I can, you know, if I give you a string as well defined, I could have just called, you know, s.snakecase here. It'll be the right thing here, and you're always editing the file, so it's going to save the changes back to there as well. What I could have done as well is I could just edit string. And since I'm in the pry session, I can break within something being evaluated and evaluate the binding within there. So in Ruby, there's a binding object that has the sort of scope that you're on, and pry adds the pry at the end, or a method that will break there. And I can save that out. Again, call my foobar snake case. What's going to happen is pry is going to break right there, and it's going to give you, you know, saying that, hey, you're within the string foobar at the bottom here. So now what do I have available? Snake case is there, the gsub, chomp, and all that stuff. But now I can also look at, well, you know, what is my self, right? What's my value there? And then I can start to play with, okay, well, let's do self gsub and, you know, some regular expression if I wanted to, and evaluate the local variables. And then I can just exit that once I've made the determination what the problem is, exit it, then it finishes the method. Of course, you'll have to go back and remove the binding, otherwise the application will break there. And that's the basics. Run it, debug it, fix it. There's aliases, question mark. I think it's $1 for source. Yeah, $1 for source. There's a of commands in here that are pretty interesting. This is a local that is the last exception that Pry knew about, and that was when we had that problem with the even method. So you can get that as well. You can figure out like backtrace from where you are. I can say pry backtrace from where you are all the way back up the stack to, you know, the beginning, the main. Amend lines kind of handy. I couldn't figure out the So for instance, if you do something like, I have a method, hello name, and I do put hello, but I really wanted to say put hello in the particular name value, then I can mix in the being the second line in my definition, and instead do puts hello, whatever it is. And it'll show you then what your input now looks like. And then you can close that off. Call your method. Yeah, you can replay certain lines. If you wanted a method, if you want to just relay that particular method, you can do that. You know, fire off gists to GitHub. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, that's the basic stuff, I guess. History, it gives you just a nice output of what the history was. Kind of handy to look through. And so that's kind of the basics of Pry. You can use Pry doc. That was handy with things like, now I can do, you know, show doc on like the loop function, which is kind of a C function, so it comes from, you know, VM eval. Or if I do, you know, string gsub, well, gsub itself, I think, is a I showed doc instead. So in this case, it'll show you C code from string C of how it does the gsub. So that pry-doc gem gives you the C source and documentation. And there's a whole host of other things as well. Let me see if I can. That's probably I have to manage my windows here. Okay, do you see the Chrome?
Yep.
Let's see, so it's just, I guess, Pry. Interesting additions to there. We didn't really touch on debugging at all, but you can step forward and back, and you know, out of the current frame kind of thing, with Pry debugger, which is down here somewhere. Debugger Pry, and there's a number of. It's kind of hard to get the configuration right because there's some inconsistencies between 1.9 and 2.x Ruby versions. So you got to find the right configuration of gems. I have some of that working if you're interested.
Can I ask a question, Tone?
What's that?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it. Well done.
So obviously Pry has support for debugging. Then, if you were to hit a breakpoint inside of a running process that was about to call a function, could you edit that function and have it reloaded before it's executed?
Yeah. You should be able to. Let's. I think I want this one. We should be able to look at that if we. Yeah, we can at least look at the string patch thing I have here and play around with that. I think this last part here was building native extensions. It needs to build a C, hook into Ruby in a different way, and that's the inconsistencies between 1.9 and 2. You need to have different gems for that. So I might have this wrong here. But let's just let's throw in the string patch. Let's put that binding pry. So binding pry is kind of your initial breakpoint.
I don't see anything on my screen right now. Do you have a terminal that you're sharing?
Oh yeah, sorry. I have to switch to share back that. Hold on. Otherwise, it's I think that it showed. Full desktop. tiling window manager doesn't work well with Hangouts. All right, so I have the binding pry in there, and that'll be your initial breakpoint. And you, with the pry by bug and similar extensions to pry for debugging, you can set breakpoints with conditionals, and disable them, remove them, that kind of thing. But that's definitely kind of another. I think we can do another session on that. So let's see. So I can just load up. So since Pry by bug was already gem installed, Pry picks up the other plugins that are inside your on your gem, your load pad really, and we'll load those up as well. So I should be able to say, and from within here, I think I have a next and a step and continue, that kind of stuff. So I can say next. And it looks like it skipped to the bottom of that. Let's see if I step into that. So stepped into, so it looked like it was evaluating the block, and then it stepped into the block that was passed to GSub. And then, let's see, step out of that. Evaluate Ruby. So this looks like, actually, this is a Pry source code here that I'm now inside of. It says I'm going further and further into the last call there. So if I wanted to get out of that one method, I can finish that method all the way back to the REPL itself. And keep on evaluating back to the main part. I can't. It will reload the file if you've edited it. So if we wanted to test that, I guess we could just have a function that could. Oh, and that's not the Pry REPL. Pry REPL. To get back to the main. There we go. Or you can just do that. Makes it complete. We instead load. Let's go back to load. And do. I mean, it's kind of. Okay. Let's see. So we need to. And we'll get the foobar, but then we can go and edit that method. Chop and then all the characters. And that'll be automatically reloaded. So when we call convert, well, you'll see it's going to break again, but it should come out of there. The upcase stuff. So hopefully that simulated it. But it will reload the thing you're editing.
That's kind of interesting, though. Does it know? So obviously, being such an object-oriented language, does it know that the function is bound to the namespace that you're currently in, so it knows which one to reload? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it. So, I think though that it's I may be wrong. I think it's doing the bookkeeping on where something is referenced in. So like particularly what file and line number that method is. Though there may be actually instances on there. Like I wonder if we could look at if we did look at snake case the method, right? And say snake case. Yeah. The line number in file might be part of the method. String methods. Oh, I guess it might be. Wow, let's go to list. Let's go to evaluate it first. That's not what. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they actually get access to the location of that method defined. I have a feeling that actually Ruby has some of that, but I can't quite get to it. I want at the convert method. Um, let's convert. Oh, that's not gonna work. Hmm. Let's see what we have here. So there's BB file, BB file, and BB line. Yeah, I think you have to investigate yourself. I think it does have that information. I just don't know where it is.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. If that is possible. So what I was thinking of, if you were to define one function and have that function call something else, and whatever it calls gets reloaded, that's kind of a classic problem with code reloading that most tools don't solve. So if it did solve that, it would be pretty impressive.
Yeah, it should because I believe it's effectively loading that. In the case of like the string reopening, is if it's loading it again, it's going to reevaluate and reopen the string and effectively redefine snake case to the new whatever the new file had in it. So it's going to just redefine effectively that method on string, right? So it's the next the next call to it should have that method. I think the BB thing might be the ByBug gem putting its stuff in there. Yeah, but that's kind of the basics of it. There's a lot of other tools you can put into it, but it has a lot just out of the basic gem itself. Some of the alternatives, like there's IRB, which is kind of your basic Ruby interpreter or REPL shell, but it's there's some extensions to that, but I think Pry and the other one called Ripple are kind of beyond. So that's it.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Impressive tool.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Seems more powerful than the REPLs for Python.
I saw
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not. I think I remember IPython having a lot of similar commands. Like the percent commands to do like list out the doc string, the source, and all that stuff. The unique that I found within Pry is that the ability to kind of traverse into the scope of objects, kind of make it easy to explore different object graphs.
Mm-hmm.
I found that pretty handy. Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Very good.
I saw their project has a lot of options, and like I saw a Pri Rails, so I think that would be great to test their their projects. Thank you very much. This helped me a lot.
I missed that. I missed that last part. Sorry, I have to raise my volume here. Hold on. Can you say what you said you saw it had different options?
They had some different projects like Rails, Pri Rails. I saw and like uh, I think I will test a little because I was missing something to debug my application. That
Yeah.
that
Yeah, I think
that will be great.
there does seem to be a
Thanks.
lot of Rails specific versions to the shells or to other tools.
Cool.
Awesome. Well,
Very
thanks,
cool.
guys. So I'll probably share this on somewhere and continue to try to. It's kind of the first go at the Hangouts on the air stuff. So it's kind of an interesting. Definitely thinking about using this for open bell sessions too, where play around with this tool or Q&A sessions. That would be really neat on Hangout on there.
It's a great
And then
idea.
you can just post them to an open bell YouTube group. Cool. Well, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks for showing it to us.
Thank
All right.
you very much.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.